come off another incredible performance from what is clearly one of the best rosters in the NBA, a big win over the Milwaukee Bucks. And clearly this team is certainly playing at a great pace and overall great productivity, even without John Morant. My name is Shawn Coleman. You can find me at StatsAC. And my co-host here with me is Mr. DaMichael Cole. DaMichael, how are you this morning, sir?
Shawn, I'm feeling good. I had a great weekend. So, let's talk some Grizzlies basketball. It's been a good, eventful time of the season, not just for the Grizzlies, but around the NBA as a whole. But the Grizzlies are kind of taking advantage of all the things going on around them.
Exactly. And Saturday was their third game in 4 nights, even without John Morant, even without Brandon Clark. This team showed up and showed out. And the man at the center of that quote is the big reason why. We'll get into that in just a moment. Of course, you can find the show at Locked On Grizz, myself at StatsSAC, DaMichael at DaMichael C. It's funny that both of our Twitter account handles end in the letter C, but hey, that's how it goes. Of course, you want to remind you, find the podcast wherever it's available on all platforms for free. And right here on YouTube, hit that subscribe button below. Lets us know you enjoy the show and lets others be able to find the show as well. So show up and show out. DaMichael Cole, there is no NBA player who has done that. Well, there are few NBA players who are doing that to the level right now of De'Anthony Melton. Just to set the stage a little bit, the Grizzlies are on a 4-game winning streak. And over that 4-game winning streak, De'Anthony Melton has made 21 threes. That is the second highest amount of threes that any player has made, that's the highest amount of threes in franchise history. Any Grizzlies players made over a 4-game stretch not named Mike Miller. 3-point shooting has been at the core of why we've been playing so well, but De'Anthony Melton is on an absolute hot streak. It's been impressive to see.
Shawn, it's one of the most impressive streaks I've seen this season, not just for Melton, because when he did it against the Rockets, it was a small sample size. Then he came out again, then he came out again, then he came out again. And next thing you know, he's 21 for his last 34 from 3-point range. 21 and 34, Shawn. If you're doing that on floaters, if you're doing that on mid-range shots, 21 and 34 is good. He's doing it on 3-pointers. And I just thought it's just been interesting to go through his mind throughout this process, because talking with him, talking to Taylor Jenkins about how is this happening, both kind of gave similar answers in the simplest form, but they both got detailed in different ways. Both of them talked about the mechanics. And, Taylor Jenkins talked about him being consistent with his mechanics. And De'Anthony Melton actually said, he made some little small, tiny adjustments. A little more on the fun side, he kind of switched from his Converse BB All-Star sneakers to his Puma sneakers. So we've seen that a couple times in March Madness as well, where players switch sneakers and have breakout performances. In the Grizzlies side of things, De'Anthony Melton has switched from Converse to Puma, and he's been breaking out. And some of his teammates have been joking around it, saying, things like, it must be the shoes. Well, also, he's done little small things, tightening his body up, his base. He talked about his base, his feet on his shot. And he gave a confident quote to me. And, shooters, shooting, you have to be confident with it. If you don't have confidence as a shooter, you're not going to shoot the ball well. And he said, every shot he shoots right now feels like it's going in. Even the ones, he said, even when he misses a shot, he feels like, he's going to make the next one. And that's the ultimate confidence for a shooter. But he's in a different zone right now. And just looking at the way he's playing, if De'Anthony Melton, 21-34 is pretty much unsustainable. That's insane. But if he's 21 of, 50? Because that's at around 40% right there. If he's 21 of 50, consistently throughout stretches for the remainder of the season, that's scary, Shawn. That's real scary.
Absolutely. And, if he switched to Pumas, it makes sense, right? Puma, P-U-M-A, pull up more accurately. There you go. That explains it right there. It hit. DaMichael got it. There we go.
You had that one in the bag. You were waiting to pull that one out.
I had to. But, hey, if we want to talk about De'Anthony Melton, wait until the right time to pull these type of shooting surges out of the bag. Listen, again, I mentioned it last week. He did this last year. In the month of March of 2021, he was one of the most lethal bench three-point shooters in the league, and he once again has emerged as doing that. Him and Desmond Bane are probably the hottest duo of three-point shooters out there. And so the Grizzlies are just firing on all cylinders when it comes to their three-point shooting and offense. But I don't think that the defense needs to be overlooked as well. Because, yes, this past Wednesday, the Grizzlies took everything that Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving gave them as far as, 78 combined points. But on Saturday, the Grizzlies set the tone early, DaMichael. 32% for the Bucks in the first half. They shot 23% on 32 threes for the game overall. Despite Giannis being Giannis, the Grizzlies did a great job of not letting anything else on the Bucks in complement them. So their ability to, in different ways, take the best from two clear championship or at least playoff contenders, that also is highly encouraging coming into this stretch run for the playoffs.
For sure. And you mentioned those players, Giannis, Chris Middleton. I thought it was just interesting to see how they would guard them in this game. And with Giannis, he did, his numbers at the end were his numbers. But the first half was when the second quarter specifically, when the Grizzlies went on a 12-1 run through the midway point of the second quarter and kind of opened the game up to double digits. That's when the game got out of hand. Well, what were Giannis' numbers in the first half? He only had 10 points, 3 of 11 shooting. So they, when you're playing a superstar, you just got to contain him enough. The raw numbers, the 30 points, yeah, he did that. But at the end of the day, a lot of those numbers in the second half, the Grizzlies were up 15 points, 18 points, 20 points when he was scoring those points. So a little bit less impactful, if that makes sense, than it would have been, if he would have been keeping them in the game and keeping the game a little bit closer. Whereas with Chris Middleton, I thought it was interesting, how would they guard him? Well, in the first quarter, in like the 10-minute mark, you see Chris Middleton running up the court. And Dylan Brooks, he wasn't in front of him, like most players guard. He guarded him from behind him, and he was screaming top lock. So, the top lock coverage in the NBA is when, a player basically is preventing another player from getting to the three-point line. You top lock it, so you lock the top, which makes him, he's going to have to try to go around you some way, or, if they throw it over the top, there's an opportunity for a layup if someone isn't behind them and all of that. But the Grizzlies' top lock coverage on Chris Middleton, trying to take away his three-pointer, and it worked. I saw that in the first quarter, and I said, okay, will be interesting to see, one, if they stick with this, and two, how it plays out. Well, Chris Middleton only made 1 three-pointer. I think he only attempted 4. So that alone, him attempting 4 3-point attempts is just something he hasn't done. And this is a Grizzlies Locked On podcast. So for those unfamiliar, Chris Middleton is pretty much automatically at least 2 3-pointers every game. I think in his last 7 games, he had made 2 or more 3-pointers. The Grizzlies held him to just 1. And it's not that they held him to just 1 on 1 of 8 shooting, because you can attribute that to just an off night of shooting. He only had 4 attempts. He couldn't even get the attempts. So again, Dylan Brooks is back. So they did a great job containing Chris the entire game, and they held off Giannis enough, just enough. Just kind of how they did, with not Golden State, Brooklyn in the fourth quarter of that game too, with Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. Just slow them down just enough so they can get over that hump when it mattered. And that's the sign of a great team to me, because the thing about great teams, they always have that extra gear. I think we've talked about it, Shawn, how the Warriors in the third quarter, they go to that extra gear. The Suns this year, I think they're like 40-something and 0 when they lead in the fourth quarter. So, the great teams have that extra gear when the game is close, or when, they're going back and forth for the team. They can say, okay, it's time to take it up a notch. The Grizzlies are showing signs of that.
So back about 15 years ago, the term pop, lock, and drop it showed dominance on the dance floor. I guess we could say 15 years later, top, lock, and stop it is a way to be dominant when stopping the three.
There you go, sir.
Beyond those musical references that I have no idea what I'm talking about, the other thing that's standing out when it comes to the Grizzlies right now is their playmaking. And we're going to talk with DaMichael here in just a second about that. But DaMichael, before we do, One of the things that we've got here is that, again, we talk about options, and the Grizzlies have so many options right now that are making the right pass, making the right read, shooting the ball effectively. But the thing is, it doesn't matter what choice you go with right now. The Grizzlies offense is absolutely firing on all cylinders. If you want your day firing all cylinders, you got to go with Built Bar. Built Bar is the protein bar that tastes like a candy bar. They got puffs, they got bars, they got things you could have in the morning, have in the afternoon as a snack. Over 18 different flavors to choose from when you go to Built.com. Plus, if you put the promo code LOCKED15 in, you'll get 15% off your next order of Built Bar. Again, when DaMichael Cole came to cover the Memphis Grizzlies, they're like winning 80% of their games. It's also because he's had a Built Bar every single day since then. When you go to Built.com right now, put in that promo code LOCKED15. You'll get 15% off your next order from Built Bar. We want to thank you for making Locked On Grizzlies your first listen of the day. But hey, we are now a month. First off, we know who the Final Four is going to be. Duke, North Carolina, Kansas, and Villanova. The Blue Bloods certainly survived. But we've also got the NFL Draft a month away as well. Check out the favorite Locked On College podcast of your choice as your second listen of the day after Locked On Grizzlies. So, DaMichael, it has been an absolute joy to see the Grizzlies play offense basically since the month of February started. And early in that month of February, we talked with Tyus Jones. I asked him, directly, what is it that seemed to really stand out in the month of February, at the start of February and now in March? It just seems like everything is firing on all cylinders. And he said that the reason why is because he's seen the team more consistent, passing up on good shots to find great shots. We know how Tyus is as effective as it is. I'll get into a few stats in just a moment. But overall, this team certainly has taken the next level when it comes to ball movement, playmaking, and finding the right shots and hitting those shots consistently.
Yeah, it's the entire roster. I mean, you look up and down in each of these games you look at the start line, it's like 2 assists, 5 assists, 5 assists, 4 assists, 3 assists, 10 assists. Like, everyone is getting their hands on the ball. A lot of offenses, you have guys who stand in the corner, don't really touch the ball unless, they're shooting or they're cutting. This offense, the ball is moving like a hot potato, Shawn. It's like it's too hot to keep in your hand for too long because none of these guys are really holding the ball. And you see it in the numbers. And some of these guys, you didn't even think they were as good as playmakers as they are. I think Steven Adams really gave a detailed answer on why all of a sudden he's having a breakout year as a passer, and he contributed to the way the NBA is going, which is very true. The centers are having the ball, at the top of the key in the mid-range area a lot more because you see a lot more of these split actions and dribble handoffs and things like that. And give Golden State credit. When Golden State start running a lot of that split action with Draymond Green, being at the top with Klay Thompson and Harrison Barnes and Steph Curry moving off of him, it was automatic baskets a lot of times. And now the NBA is gravitating towards that because pick and roll is much easier to guard than split action when you have 3 guys running around, 1 guy with the ball. But the Grizzlies with Steven Adams, he's become real good at that. And it's not just him. I mean, Desmond Bane, I've talked, a lot about the way he's playing right now. And he's the backup point guard. Desmond Bane is the backup point guard. And we've seen, Shawn, he's getting guys a lot of easy shots too. And he's growing more and more into that role. So you got him. You got a guy like De'Anthony Melton who's really pushing the ball with pace, with speed. And Tyus Jones, I mean, I'll let you get into the numbers, but 10 assists, no turnovers in the last game, Shawn. He's been the standard for taking care of the basketball, right?
Absolutely, as he always is. The Grizzlies released yesterday that, he's on pace to lead the league in, as a player in assists to turnover ratio. But let's look at the numbers a little bit, and it's pretty dadgum staggering for multiple players. So last night, the Grizzlies had 30 assists to 8 turnovers, which in of itself the Grizzlies have done before. But here's the even more fun dive into it. Combined, Tyus Jones, Steven Adams, and Desmond Bane had 20 assists to only 1 turnover last night. You don't see that often.
The 3 guys
that
just
yeah. When you're moving the ball like that, with the Grizzlies' overall talent to back it up, it's going to be very hard for anybody to beat them. But here's the even bigger key. Here's the key to showing this ball movement can be sustainable to where it can take our offense to the level it needs to be to win the playoffs. Since February 21st, which for the Grizzlies, it was 24 games heading into last night, the trio of Steven Adams, Tyus Jones, and Desmond Bane, DaMichael, 290 total assists to only 69 turnovers. That is a 4.2 assist to turnover ratio. That for a player would be, I believe, in the top 10 of the league for players that would qualify. It's not to Tyus Jones's level, but it would. And the even more fun thing, DaMichael, is that Tyus Jones himself over his past 25 games, 100 and I believe was it 6 assists to 9 total turnovers. Over his past 25 games, Tyus Jones has 12 double-digit scoring performances versus 9 total turnovers. The evolution of this team into arguably being one of the, if not the best teams in taking care of the basketball and playmaking has what has allowed our offense to consistently be at the level that it needs to be to advance in the playoffs.
John, Tyus Jones, I mean, when I watch him, bringing the ball up the court, all I could think about is him carrying a newborn baby and just rocking it in, because that's how he takes care of the ball. He treats the basketball like a newborn baby, and he's saying, nope, this is my baby. No one else is going to touch it. Leave her alone. Leave him alone. You can't touch my baby. And, I mean, he led the league in assist to turnovers last year, the year before that, and right now he's at around, I think, 6.6 assists to every turnover. That, Shawn, the next closest is like 5.2. He's a full assist and then some above the next closest. I mean, it's crazy what he's doing. And even, so this will be, 4 consecutive seasons, I believe, of leading the league in assist to turnover ratio. Even if you go back to 2 seasons prior to that, he was top 5. I think he was second or third the year before that. He was second or third the year before that. It's just, this is who he is. He takes care of the basketball, and when he's shooting the ball the way he is, and the floater is automatic, the Grizzlies really have a luxury right now where John Morant can go down and you can say, oh, we'll offload him for 2 weeks. That's a luxury. Maybe they would have pushed the envelope a little bit if you didn't have a guy like Tyus Jones behind, but you have Tyus Jones back there. It's okay, ho-hum, no problem. Offense, number 1 rated offense in the NBA when Tyus Jones starts. I mean, it's incredible.
And that's the thing about it. You would love for us to, have, another top 10 consistent player with Ja. You would love for us to be the best shooting team in the league. You would love for us to be overall the best defense in the league. But being as young as we are, it's just hard to do that. But make no mistake about it. While we may not be, at the very top of the NBA in those things, there are multiple things that we are elite at on the hustle, in the paint, on the boards. But it also must be understood that between Tyus Jones and Steven Adams, 2 of our veterans, they, in the aspect of the game they are strongest at, are 2 of the best in NBA history. Tyus Jones when it comes to taking care of the basketball in terms of assist to turnover ratio, and Steven Adams when it comes to offensive rebounding. Their overall metrics suggest they are 2 of the best talents in history in those specific aspects of the game. So while it may not be the aspects of the game that they're most talked about or the most looked at, we're still elite in multiple areas such as that. And that plays a key part in us dominating that possession battle.
Yeah, when you have role players,
I
feel like it has to be something that they're elite at. Not everything, because that's why, they're in role players is almost a box term. So I don't want to use that term necessarily. But when you have players who are more understanding that, they're not the go-to guys, they have certain things that they need to be elite at for the team to be elite. I always go back to the 2 teams who made the finals last year. PJ Tucker for the Bucks. He wasn't, some amazing shooter or anything, but you knew you were going to get hustle plays out of him. You knew you were going to get great defense. He's elite at those things. The Suns, Mikal Bridges, he's an elite defender. He would knock down some corner 3-pointers and things like that. You knew you were going to get those things from him. With the Grizzlies, Steven Adams, you're not going to get some fancy post moves and turnaround jumpers too often. But what you are going to get is the number 1 offensive rebounder in the NBA. Desmond Bane, he's expanded his game. We see it. And eventually he's going to be there. But for a fact, teams don't want to leave Desmond Bane open. Teams don't want to give him that 1 dribble pull up to the mid-range. Teams want to take away, his scoring prowess. And same thing with a lot of these other guys. Tyus Jones, we just mentioned, taking care of the ball. Brandon Clark, offensive rebounding, his floater into his paint scoring just in general. All of these guys have a skill. I mean, De'Anthony Melton, he is 7th in the NBA in deflections, and he comes off the bench, Shawn. He comes off the bench. I mean, his hands are everywhere on everything. It's just each of these guys have a skill. When you have guys coming off the bench, you can't just have a guy who is, okay, he's a decent shooter, he's a decent defender, he's a decent playmaker. It needs to be, he's a great defender. And oh, yeah, he's a decent playmaker, by the way, too. Or he's a decent shooter, or he's a great shooter, but his defense is okay. They have guys who are elite in categories, and it makes it easy for a coach like Taylor Jenkins.
It absolutely does. And the great thing about role players playing well is that when your main talents may not be at 100%, those role players can step up. And that may be the defining characteristic of tonight's game, what is, in my opinion, the biggest game remaining on the schedule for the Grizzlies as they welcome the Golden State Warriors to the FedEx Forum. We'll get into that in just a moment. But before we do, we talk about all these moments, right? Talk about all these, great moments to see Ja, Steph, Jaren, all these guys. Well, NBA Top Shot is the officially licensed NFT of the NBA. Connect with the community of hundreds of thousands of NBA fans as a natural progression of fantasy sports, a way to upgrade your experience as a fan. The future of what an NBA looks like this: trading cards that basically take place at any moment you can think of. And akin to the stock market in the NBA, every day millions of dollars worth of NFTs are traded back and forth between tens of thousands of NBA fans around the world, whether it be in the form of fantasy sports or what have you. Top Shot is a great way to be able to make your NBA experience even better. Investors include Michael Jordan and Kevin Durant, not to mention Will Smith. There are also a lot of NBA players in the community like Tyrese Halliburton, Cole Anthony, and Harrison Barnes. If you were to tell someone in 1916 that your piece of cardboard with Babe Ruth's face on it would be worth $1 million today, everybody would think you're crazy. This is the opening tip of a digital age, and the NBA's officially licensed NFT will be a big part of that digital age. NBA Top Shot is the future of being an NBA fan. Own officially licensed NFTs, rare NFTs of the greatest moments from NBA history. Sign up today at lockedon.nbatopshot.com. Listen, the other thing I can tell you is this: we are now escaping the winter. And DaMichael, I think you can back me up on this. Going into the spring, you're going to have to get your car looked at probably to make sure it's running the best that it can, right?
Yeah, it's springtime, so it's time to take some trips. And if you want to take some trips, you need your car. You need to make sure everything is fine tuned.
Exactly. And of course, like the Grizzlies, you want, Ja Morant's the engine, Tyus Jones is to replace, the engine to replace him when he's not, but you want all your parts working. But if you're running into that not happening, you need to visit rockauto.com. Amazing selection, reliably low prices. Within a few clicks of the button online, you can find the parts that you need, regardless of make and model or the part itself. Things are also economically friendly because, car parts typically fall at a budget, but this is a family-owned business that's been in business for over 20 plus years. You know that they're going to do right by you. Visit rockauto.com and let them know the Locked On Podcast Network sent you. rockauto.com, amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the car parts you ever need. Visit rockauto.com today. On tomorrow's edition of the Locked On Grizzlies podcast, we'll have plenty to talk about when it comes to the fallout from the Warriors-Grizzlies game tonight in the FedEx Forum. We'll also take a look at the remaining schedule, not only for the Grizzlies when it comes to their playoff aspirations, but one thing we haven't talked that much about, DaMichael, is what is the outlook for the Grizzlies-Lakers pick that hopefully we'll hope they'll keep up, that they're going to keep themselves. That could be in more danger than people think. We'll discuss that on tomorrow's edition of the Locked On Grizzlies podcast. So, DaMichael, let's look at this a little bit. Now, I know you've been kind of keeping up with it. So, the Warriors lost to the Wizards.
Yeah, it was a bad loss. It was a bad
loss. Yeah, so they're 48-27 now. And they are now 4 games behind the Grizzlies. Both teams have 6 games remaining. So, we're both baseball fans. We both seen this when it comes to September. That's a pretty hard amount to overcome, especially when you're talking about both teams' best players being out, not just Steph and Ja, but other very important players as well. Just when you look at that from a standings perspective going into your night, what are your thoughts from both teams' ends as they, again, probably play their most important game remaining on their schedule against each other tonight?
Yeah, I think the difference we're seeing, and I don't want to discredit Golden State for this because they've actually were the model of this when they, first came in 2015 with the whole strength in numbers thing. That came from being able to draft Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Draymond Green, Harrison Barnes, your entire core pretty much. And you were able to go get, make small minimal moves, good trade value for a guy like Andre Iguodala, and they were deep. That's what made them so good. Well, that depth is kind of rolled over because those superstars during that run had to get paid. So you had to give, Klay Thompson his money. Draymond Green had to get his money. Stephen Curry had to get his money. Oh, by the way, you acquired Andrew Wiggins, who is on a pretty nice contract himself. So with that being said, now their strength isn't in numbers anymore. They have some nice players. They have some young talent. They've drafted some really nice young players. But when Steph Curry out right now, we have seen this offense in particular. Defensively, I think they're still pretty elite. But offensively, they have plummeted. They've just plummeted. I mean, the system kind of revolves around Steph Curry. But I think that's the difference. Whereas in Memphis, it's more of that strength and number style. You hit these low budget signings. You go out here and you acquire a guy like Steven Adams, and you got all these guys on rookie deals. You got John Morant on a rookie deal, Desmond Bane on a rookie deal, Zaire Williams, Jaren Jackson just got the extension, but that doesn't kick in until next season, so he's still on a rookie deal. You hit on the margins, and the Grizzlies have done that. Even though you had to, you paid De'Anthony Melton, but he earned that money. And you have Tyus Jones coming off the bench. Strength in numbers is what has made the Grizzlies in this recent stretch. Beginning of March, Shawn, we were talking about how big this game was going to be. And we thought, it was going to be a 1-2 game lead either way. But the reason that this is a 4-game lead right now for the Grizzlies is what we just talked about. I mean, it's the strength in numbers of the Grizzlies. John Morant can go down on the Grizzlies and Tyus Jones will step up. They don't have that answer in Golden State. And it's not even just John Morant. Everyone wants to talk about that. But the Grizzlies are also 34-14 without Dillon Brooks. They are 4-0 without Steven Adams. This team just is deep. They're a deep team, and they're able to cover up some of those weaknesses. Whereas when Draymond went down, Golden State started to struggle. Now with Curry going down, they're struggling on another level, Shawn.
Absolutely. And the thing that I'll say is this, is that, we talked about it, I believe a few weeks ago. I think we talked about it, when Steph Curry went down with his injury, and then, of course, Ja went down with his injury. I mean, you're looking at the top 3 seeds in the Western Conference who over the past month have seen the engine to their offense, Chris Paul, Steph Curry, and Ja Morant, go down at some point in time. Paul's back. Curry likely is going to be back. We expect Ja to be back. But that's the whole thing that stands out. And this shows that the Grizzlies are very, very strong. Again, a big reason why the most important factor in the Grizzlies being a contender this year is Ja Morant, without a shadow of a doubt. But the thing that stands out as to why the Grizzlies are a contender versus other teams who have players on Ja's level is his supporting cast in Memphis is probably one of the deepest, if not the deepest, in the league. But the thing that also stands out is this, is that at this point, the Grizzlies supporting cast has just been playing so well, they're now afforded the luxury of just focusing on getting healthy. And the Warriors are kind of afforded that luxury as well, because now that they are so far behind in terms of being 4 games behind with 6 games left, both these teams have come into this game versus fighting for that number 2 spot and potentially home court advantage between them two in a second round matchup. It's just fighting the war of attrition now and staying healthy. And with the Grizzlies, it's not just Ja. Both Clark and Jaren Jackson Jr. are questionable for tonight's game as well.
Yeah, and with the Brandon Clark thing, I think we were starting to wonder because he missed the second game. It was like, okay, what's going on? It's hip soreness, or is it more to it? But it's all accounts. Taylor Jenkins, he talked about it and he didn't sound concerned. It sounds like we're at that point of the season. The Grizzlies just trying to give guys a little bit more rest. Sometimes they may not just be one game and then come back a couple days later. Maybe it's a couple games, 3 or 4 days off, and then that's what it sounds like with Brandon Clark, even with Ja Morant. A lot of people are confused about what's going on there with the whole, the Grizzlies saying they are offloading him, and reevaluating him in 2 weeks. Well, in pregame, Shawn, I watched him really closely. For one, he came out to warm up, did his own. Ja Morant comes out, I'd say an hour before every game, and he does his own little warm up where he starts off. I think he starts off shooting floaters, then he goes to the free throw line, then he goes to the 3-point line. And does his whole little shebang. Well, he came out, he did the same thing, shot his floaters, shot his, he did more spot up shooting. It was less stuff with, with a lot of movement, but he did his warm up. And I think that was his way of showing fans, showing people in attendance, Hakuna Matata. Like he said, it means no worries. He's fine. And he came out, he warmed up. Now he didn't, at the end of his warm ups, him and a couple of assistant coaches, they start to play a little dodgeball where they throw the ball at him as he's running back towards the locker room. He didn't do that because, that would have drove some fans crazy. But he walked off with no problem, went back, changed into his nice fit, to sit on the bench and watch the guys. And I think that was his way of saying, things are fine over here, Shawn.
Now, I will say this, of course, we talk about, different things that are going into this game. It may not be as much important. The key for both teams is getting their main players healthy, but there still is a game to play because nothing is locked up as of yet. And there's also still a couple of players by the name of Jordan Poole and Andrew Wiggins. I know Wiggins has kind of fallen off a bit since the All-Star break, but Jordan Poole, we want to talk about De'Anthony Melton being one of the better supporting cast. Jordan Poole has been an absolute force in the month of March, I believe averaging 24 points per game. Low-key having a case for, potentially player of the month contention. I don't think he'll get it, but at least being in that conversation. The other point that I'll get at, DaMichael, is that the Grizzlies have had their issues. They had it last year when it came to Andrew Wiggins and Jordan Poole. So even though Steph's not playing, Clay may not play on the second night of the back-to-back, Draymond may be unavailable as well. My point that I'm getting at is that the Grizzlies, especially if Jaren or Clark or both don't play, the Grizzlies certainly are going to have their hands full with Wiggins and Poole. If either one of them get going early, they certainly could be a thorn in the side of any plans the Grizzlies have to win this game.
Jordan Poole has been so good, Shawn. You hit the nail on the coffin right there, just with Jordan Poole, not Jordan Peele. We're not trying to, we don't want him to get out of just yet. We're going to let him play the game before we let him get out. But Jordan Poole, it's gotten to the point, Shawn, where we've seen people, I've seen people at least talking about him possibly starting over Klay Thompson. That would have been something that would have been completely outrageous to say, beforehand, but he's played so good. And Klay is, he's finding his foot and he's had some really good games. I think he had 38 a couple nights ago and played 40 minutes, which he said was a big hurdle for him, reaching that 40 minutes benchmark. But Jordan Poole in particular, and then, Klay Thompson, and I don't know. I don't know how they're going to manage the back-to-back too. That's another thing to see there. Klay Thompson, I don't know if he's played any back-to-backs yet, Shawn. So that's an interesting perspective as well. Same thing with Draymond Green. The Warriors are really lackadaisical in just how when they get to those back-to-backs towards the end of the season, they rest these guys and whatnot. But I would think they would think this is a big game. Just for, this is a team, if anything, this is a team that you could possibly see in the second round. But I think Golden State's defense will still be stout. It'll still be strong. We'll see. We're going to see this Grizzlies offense that has been a buzzsaw go against a really good defense, probably the best defense they'll play, or one of the best defenses they'll play the remainder of the season. We'll see how they match up there. I think that's going to be real telling. And what's also going to be telling is, like you said, how they handle Jordan Poole, how they handle Andrew Wiggins. These wings. We've seen wings give the Grizzlies some problems. Dylan Brooks has kind of, helped there since he's been back. But Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, they were just spectacular. Those are just two skilled guys. I think you can throw those two out of the window. But outside of that, they've really improved there, and that's going to be the next test with Golden State.
Absolutely. And both teams have 7 games left. And listen, it doesn't get any easier for the Grizzlies. I know that Golden State, is right up there. But in all honesty, this may be one of the easier games for the Grizzlies to win. And the Grizzlies still have plenty of reason to win these games. But when you've got the
Suns,
the Celtics, the Nuggets, the Jazz, all those teams have something to play for. Both the Pelicans do, and of course
even the Pelicans. Yeah, the Pelicans just beat the Lakers.
Yeah, it doesn't get any easier. So the Grizzlies got to take advantage of what they can now. We'll certainly have all of it for you tomorrow. Of course, also again talking about what the outlook for the Grizzlies playoff picture looks like now that after they played the Warriors, and also for that Lakers pick, which after the Lakers lost on Sunday, it's not looking too good. But we'll break all that down on tomorrow's edition of the Locked On Grizzlies podcast. Until then, for DaMichael, hope you have a great evening tonight. And for myself, Shawn Coleman, DaMichael, you got anything else to add?
Shawn, I think, by next episode, we're going to either be saying the 2 seed is wrapped up, or we're going to say the Grizzlies are going to have to put their foot on the gas pedal, because after they get the Spurs for what should be a win, you just mentioned it, but it gets real tough.
It does. But hey, at the end of the day, we keep saying about this Grizzlies team. They just keep winning. That's all that matters. For DaMichael Cole, my name is Shawn Coleman. We'll talk to you again soon here on the Locked On Grizzlies podcast.